So his claim basically was that, yeah, we don't have an original. We don't even have early copies. And then when we finally get a copy, it's pretty old. I mean, it's maybe in the second, third, fourth century.
Right.
And then when we look at the most ancient copies, let's say we have 3 or 4 copies of a particular manuscript, and they're all, he would say 4th century copies, so they're pretty old. And he says, then when you take a look at those and you compare them to each other, they aren't exactly the same. They have small one-word differences here or there, that for him was way too much. I mean, that was enough for him to say, look. He finds then, he says this in his book, that there are so many thousands of 1 or 2 word variations between the oldest manuscripts that he says there are more variations between these manuscripts than there are words in the New Testament. That's how he puts it in the book. And I think if you look at that, you would say, yeah, that's pretty dramatic. And that's something that would, I think, almost anyone who's reasonable about this would say, yeah, that makes me worry.
Right.
That I can't accept that. And that's really where he was. Now, what I'm going to try to do is open up why I think this doesn't really work. And I do this kinds of presentations in front of groups. I try to show them. Now, he will admit this. He will say this. The vast majority, 99.9% of these, are 1 or 2 word variations in which no meaning is challenged. So he would say the identity of Jesus is not under challenge. Nothing about any of these variations. It's not as a one side says, oh, Jesus is not divine, didn't rise from the dead, and the other copy says it does.
Right.
These are small, mostly grammatical differences between. So what I want to do is just show you a couple. And let me just open this up. So I apologize to all of you who were hoping to see this, but I'll just explain it to you. So he'll talk about how it's instead of saying my will or God's will, it might say his will,
right,
when it's referring to God all along. A lot of these are small one-word changes. Okay, so let's just make that clear. But what and Bart is correctly showing his audience how to identify the variations between manuscripts, but he's not sharing with his audience why translators decide on which one of those words
right,
to put in their translation. And how I typically illustrate it is this: if I was to text my son a message, and it's a message about I'm going to bring him some money to help him through college. I'll bring him $5,000 for the rest of the semester. He's at USC. My other son's a doctor, so when he was in med school, and I'm going to bring it to you at 5 o'clock on Wednesday. I'll meet you at Starbucks on Main Street, and I will bring you $5,000. But let's say that first text to him, I typo it, and the 5 is a percentage sign, so you cannot tell how much money it is.
mm-hmm.
And so I text him a second time. Only now I've misspelled Starbucks, and the autocorrect has called it starving. And so he's like, now that's incorrect. And I'm a perfectionist, so I do it a third time. And the third time, it says, instead of Main Street, it says Main Streak. The fourth time I text it, I've now got, instead of sending the money you need, I actually, it autocorrects and it says nerd. I send him 5 different texts, none of which are correct.
Right.
But he knows already what I am going to do. He can tell me, he knows, stop. I'm going to meet you on Wednesday at 5 o'clock on Starbucks on Main Street for $5,000. How does he know that when he doesn't even have a single inerrant text? As a matter of fact, if I texted him 100 more times, and each time I still have an error in 100 more texts, well, now it could properly be said that I've got more errors, more variance between the text than I have letters in the text.
But you also have more,
Yes, but he knows what my intent was. He knows what the original message was, even though it's been typoed. And how he knows is because copies and numbers of copies matter more than numbers of variants.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is not so as the variants increase, but so also do the number of copies you have to compare.
Right.
So it's kind of,
right.
I mean, he's right in saying that the variants.
This is how we do this. This is how we remove the variants to get back to what we believe is a reliable copy of the autograph. And so I think for us, it's about making sure when we say inerrancy, we talk about inerrancy, what we're talking about. Look, clearly we don't have the autographs.
Right.
And the copies we have don't match. And although none of these differences have any impact on content, and have any impact on the deity of Christ or any of the orthodox claims of Christianity, they don't match. So we had to say, well, what do you mean by inerrancy then? Well, what I mean by inerrancy is that we have a process in place that allows us to get back reliably to the inerrant original, which we don't have access to.